What if I told you that the most powerful thing you could do right now, in a world that never stops screaming for your attention, is nothing? No talking, no scrolling, no reacting, just silence. Marcus Aurelius, a man who commanded the most powerful empire on earth, chose silence as his greatest weapon. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how. Welcome back to Wisdom of the Stoics, where we strip away the noise of the modern world and return to the timeless truths that the greatest minds in history lived by. If you're new here, welcome. You found this channel at exactly the right moment. Today's topic is one that doesn't get nearly enough attention in our age of non-stop content, notifications and opinions. The power of silence, not the silence of weakness, not the silence of someone who has nothing to say, but the deliberate, disciplined, transformative silence that Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor, Stoic philosopher, and one of the greatest leaders who ever lived, practiced every single day. We're going to uncover 9 Stoic lessons hidden inside his masterwork, Meditations, a private journal he never intended for us to read. And by the end of this video, you will never look at silence the same way again. Stay with me. Every lesson builds on the last. And number 7 changed my life when I truly understood it. Let's begin. Before we dive into the lessons, let's take 60 seconds to understand who we're actually talking about. Because when most people hear Roman emperor, they picture power, luxury, military conquest. And yes, Marcus Aurelius had all of that. He ruled from 161 to 180 AD. He commanded armies. He held more earthly power than almost any human being who has ever lived. But here's what most people don't know. He hated it. Not the responsibility. He took that seriously, almost painfully so. But the noise of it, the politics, the flattery, the endless demands on his attention. So every morning, before the empire woke up, before the generals came with their reports, before the crowds cheered his name, Marcus Aurelius sat down in silence and wrote. Not for us, not for posterity, for himself. He was trying to become better, trying to hold himself accountable, trying to quiet the chaos of the world, by first quieting the chaos inside his own mind. The result was Meditations, arguably the most honest and human document ever written, by someone in a position of absolute power. And running through every page, like a thread of gold through dark cloth, is this one radical idea. Silence is not empty. Silence is where wisdom lives. Now, let's talk about the 9 lessons he left us. Lesson number 1, speak only when it improves upon silence. Lesson number 1, and it sets the foundation for everything else. Speak only when your words improve upon the silence. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Simple, devastating. Think about your last conversation. How many words were spoken that didn't need to be? How many opinions were shared that changed nothing? How many arguments were had over things that a week later no one remembered? We live in a culture that has confused volume with value. We think that the loudest voice wins, that the person who speaks first is the smartest, that filling silence is a social obligation. Marcus Aurelius would look at this and quietly shake his head. Because here's what he understood that we've forgotten. Every word you speak costs you something. It costs you energy. It costs you credibility, because the more you speak, the more chances you have to say something shallow, untrue, or regrettable. And it costs you the one thing that silence gives you freely: perception. When you are silent, you see clearly. You observe what others miss. You hear what goes unsaid. You understand the room before the room understands itself. Here's a challenge for you, and I mean this genuinely. For the next 24 hours, before you speak in any conversation, ask yourself one question. Does this improve upon the silence? You'll be amazed how often the honest answer is no. And the even more amazing thing? People will start to see you differently. Not because you became more impressive, but because silence itself is impressive in a world where everyone is shouting. Lesson number 2, the discipline of not reacting. Lesson 2 is the one that might save your most important relationships. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. But let me tell you what this actually means in practice. Because most people read this quote, nod, and then immediately react to the next thing that irritates them. Here's the truth. The gap between stimulus and response is where your entire character lives. Something happens. Someone insults you, betrays you, disappoints you. In that split second before you react, that is where you make the choice of who you are. Marcus Aurelius was surrounded by people who wanted things from him. Senators who flattered him to his face and conspired behind his back. Generals who questioned his decisions. Even family members who, history tells us, caused him enormous private pain. And yet, again and again, he chose not to react. Not because he was emotionless. His journals are full of frustration, grief, and exhaustion. But because he understood something profound. Reacting gives your power to whatever provoked you. When you explode in anger, the person who angered you now controls your state. When you spiral in anxiety over bad news, the event now controls your mind. When you obsess over what someone said about you, their opinion now controls your peace. Silence, the deliberate pause, the held breath, the moment of stillness before the response takes that control back. There's a practice Marcus used that's buried in Meditations, and modern psychology has actually confirmed its effectiveness. He would mentally zoom out before reacting to anything. Imagine the situation from above, then from further above, city, country, planet, universe. Suddenly, the insult that felt catastrophic doesn't. The Stoics called this the view from above. We call it perspective. But you can only access perspective in silence. And I want to ask you, be honest with yourself right now. What's the last thing you reacted to that you wish you hadn't? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Lesson 3, Silence as Self-Knowledge. Lesson 3 is perhaps the most uncomfortable one. Marcus wrote, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." And elsewhere, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if thou wilt ever dig." Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us are afraid of silence because we are afraid of ourselves. Think about it. Why do we reach for our phones the moment we're alone? Why do we need music in the car, podcasts while we walk, TV in the background while we cook? Because when everything goes quiet, we can hear ourselves. And for many of us, if we're being really honest, we don't like what we hear. The doubts, the regrets, the voice that says you're not doing enough. You're not becoming who you said you'd be, so we drown it out. We call this entertainment. We call it multitasking. We call it staying connected. Marcus Aurelius called it cowardice, not harshly. He was deeply compassionate, but he was direct. The person who cannot sit in silence with themselves does not know themselves, and the person who does not know themselves cannot grow, cannot lead, cannot be truly free. The Stoic practice of journaling, which Marcus did obsessively, is really a practice of forced silence with the self. You sit, you stop performing, you stop managing how you appear, and you ask the hardest questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I actually believe? Am I living in alignment with my values? The answers will surprise you. Sometimes they'll embarrass you. That's exactly the point. Silence is not meditation retreat luxury. It is ruthless self-examination. And the Stoics believed it was the beginning of all wisdom. Lesson 4. Protecting your inner citadel. This is one of the most famous concepts in Stoic philosophy, and it flows directly from the practice of silence. Marcus Aurelius described the mind as an inner citadel, a fortress that no external force could penetrate, unless you opened the gates. He wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Read that again. Your mind literally becomes what you fill it with. This is not metaphor, this is neuroscience. The thoughts you repeat become neural pathways. The emotions you rehearse become your default state. The voices you allow in, through media, through conversations, through the people you surround yourself with, shape who you are at a biological level. And here's where silence becomes a protective force, not just a personal practice. Every piece of content you consume is a voice entering your citadel. Every argument you engage with, every news cycle you follow, every outrage you participate in. Marcus spent decades, as the most powerful man in a world that never stopped demanding things from him. And he survived it, mentally and morally, because he was ruthlessly selective about what he allowed inside. Not ignorant, he faced reality unflinchingly, but he chose the silence of wisdom over the noise of opinion. And here's the question I want you to sit with. What voices have you let inside your citadel that don't deserve to be there? The friend who constantly drains you. The social media algorithm designed to make you anxious. The news that tells you the world is ending every single day. Silence doesn't just mean not speaking. It means guarding what you listen to. Lesson 5. Silence in the face of criticism. Let me tell you something that almost no one talks about in personal development content. The most powerful response to criticism is often no response at all. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire, whose every decision affected millions of lives, was criticized constantly by senators, by military rivals, by historians of his own time, by his own troops during campaigns. And his response, captured in Meditations, was something that would feel almost alien today. I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others. He wasn't dismissing criticism. He was pointing at something deeper. Why do we hand our peace to people who haven't earned it? When someone criticizes you unfairly and you argue back, defend yourself, explain yourself, justify yourself, you are telling them, your opinion has power over me. When you stay silent, not from weakness, not from having nothing to say, but from the disciplined understanding that your character doesn't need to be defended to people who've already decided, you are saying something far more powerful.
I know who I am.
Your opinion changes nothing. Now, this is important, and I want to be balanced here. Marcus was not saying ignore all criticism. The Stoics believed deeply in growth, in being open to correction from those who knew more or saw more clearly. The difference is this: criticism from a wise source, silence to receive it fully, then grow. Criticism from ignorance or malice, silence as non-engagement, then move on. The silence is the same. The internal posture is completely different. And honestly, this lesson alone is worth watching this video 10 times over. Because in an age of comment sections and quote tweets and public call-outs, the person who can remain silent in the face of unjust criticism is incredibly rare and, because of that rarity, incredibly powerful. Lesson 6. The silence before action. We're at Lesson 6 now, and I want to shift the energy slightly. Because so far we've talked about silence as restraint, as protection, as self-knowledge. But Marcus Aurelius also understood silence as preparation. He wrote, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do accordingly. Before every significant action, before every campaign, every decree, every difficult conversation, there is a moment of silence that separates the impulsive from the exceptional." Think about the greatest performers in any field. The surgeon before the first incision, the athlete before the game-deciding play, the leader before the speech that will define their legacy. They all describe the same thing. A moment, sometimes just a breath, of absolute internal stillness. Not blankness, clarity. The noise goes away. The fear goes away. The ego goes away. And what's left is pure, clean intention. Marcus called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. Sitting in silence and imagining everything that could go wrong, so that when it does, you are already prepared. Modern psychology calls this mental rehearsal. Navy SEALs call it visualization. The Stoics called it wisdom. The silence before action is where strategy is born. And the beautiful irony is this: the people who pause longest before acting are often the ones who act most decisively when the moment comes, because they didn't just react, they chose. Lesson 7. Silence as grief, the lesson no one talks about. I told you at the beginning that Lesson 7 changed me. I meant that. Marcus Aurelius lost almost everything. He lost children, multiple children, in a time when infant mortality was common but no less devastating. He watched his empire ravaged by plague. He lost friends, mentors, people he loved. And his private response to this grief written in a journal no one was supposed to read, is one of the most profoundly human things I have ever encountered. Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight. But then, pages later, the mask slips. Do not indulge in such thoughts as these, that trouble yourself and others. I live in a bad place, and how hard this life is, and again, how hard it is to deal with such people. He was talking to himself, reminding himself, struggling. And here's the lesson I want you to understand that is so rarely spoken about. Sometimes, the most stoic thing you can do is sit in silence with your grief and let it be real. Not perform strength, not rush back to productivity, not announce on social media how you're coping. Just sit, feel it, honor it. Marcus understood that grief avoided becomes grief calcified. It hardens inside you. It becomes bitterness. It becomes rage. It becomes the quiet resentment that poisons every joy. But grief witnessed, in silence, with honesty, without performing for anyone, moves through you. The Stoics were not emotionless. They were emotionally honest, and the silence they prescribed for grief was not suppression. It was reverence. If you are carrying something heavy right now, and I suspect some of you watching this are, I want you to know, you don't have to explain it. You don't have to process it on a timeline. You don't have to be okay. Sit with it in silence. Let it be what it is. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, sat with his pain in private, in ink, in the quiet before dawn. That's not weakness. That's one of the most courageous things a human being can do. Lesson 8, the silence of enough. Lesson 8, and I think this might be the most radical idea in this entire video. Marcus Aurelius was obscenely wealthy. He had access to anything and everything the ancient world could offer. And he wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself in your way of thinking. And confine yourself to the present." The Stoics called the principle behind this autarkeia, self-sufficiency, the ability to be content without needing more. And in our world, engineered from the ground up to make, you feel perpetually not enough, to need the next purchase, the next achievement, the next dopamine hit. This is nothing short of revolutionary. The silence of enough is the ability to sit with what you have and feel. Genuinely feel that it is sufficient. Not settling, not giving up, not passive. But the deep, quiet recognition that you are not lacking anything essential right now, in this moment. Because here's what Marcus knew about the endless pursuit of more. It never arrives. You get the thing you wanted. There's a moment, sometimes just seconds, of satisfaction. And then the hunger returns, slightly bigger than before. The Stoics called this the hedonic treadmill in philosophy, running faster and faster to stay in the same place emotionally. The exit? Silence. Stillness. The radical act of stopping and saying, "This, right now, is enough." When was the last time you sat, truly sat, without consuming anything, without working toward anything, without planning or scrolling or optimizing, just existed? That is what Marcus Aurelius did every morning. And he ruled the most powerful empire in the world from a place of inner enough. Imagine what you could do from the same place. Lesson 9, the final silence, memento mori. And now we arrive at the final lesson. And it is the one that gives all the others their weight. Marcus Aurelius returned to one idea more than any other in his private journals. Death, not morbidly, not with fear, with clarity. He wrote, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly. And it is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." The Stoic practice of memento mori, remember that you will die, was not a dark exercise. It was the ultimate act of liberation. Because when you truly accept that your time is finite, that this day will not come again, that the people you love will not always be here, that the petty grievances and the social media arguments and the things you've been putting off are all happening in a life that is already running out, everything becomes clearer. Silence becomes easier because you stop wasting words. Non-reaction becomes easier because you stop wasting energy on things that don't matter. Grief becomes easier because you stop fighting the nature of things. Enough becomes enough because you stop chasing what you don't actually need. Memento mori is the final silence, and it's not frightening. It's the most clarifying thought a human mind can hold. Marcus Aurelius, who had everything power could give a person, stared at this silence regularly, and it made him kinder, more present, more grateful, more intentional, because he knew what we so often forget. You are not guaranteed tomorrow, so what will you do with today? We've covered 9 lessons today. Let me leave them with you one final time. Lesson 1. Speak only when your words improve upon silence. Lesson 2. The discipline of not reacting. The gap is where your character lives. Lesson 3. Silence as self-knowledge. The courage to hear yourself. Lesson 4. Protect your inner citadel. Guard what you let in. Lesson 5. Silence in the face of criticism. Your peace is not for sale. Lesson 6. The silence before action, where strategy and clarity are born. Lesson 7. Silence as grief, the courage to feel what's real. Lesson 8. The silence of enough, the most radical act of our time. Lesson 9. Memento mori, the final silence that makes every moment matter. Marcus Aurelius did not have a quiet life. He had an impossibly loud one, but he built a quiet inside that no amount of external noise could touch. And that is what he is offering you right now, through words written nearly 2,000 years ago, in the dark hours before an empire woke up. The invitation is simple. Be a little more silent today. Before you speak, pause. Before you react, breathe. Before you fill the silence, ask if it needs to be filled, and see what happens. If this video gave you something, a new perspective, a moment of recognition, a thought worth sitting with, share it with one person who needs it today. Not for the channel, for them. And if you're new here and you want more of this, real philosophy, real application, ancient wisdom for the modern world, subscribe and join this community. We go deep here. We take this seriously, and we do it together. I read every comment. Tell me, which of these 9 lessons hit you hardest? I'll see you in the next one.